Breaking news today on Sekulow as Congress sets the date for Mayorkas impeachment markup.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
All right, so now we know the next step in the impeachment process of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Of course, we have gone through these, and we've talked about it a lot on the broadcast, the immigration numbers that are just illegal immigration numbers that are out of control. We've seen it as a top issue. Interesting. In New Hampshire, you see all these states, of course, you think more northern border be, more concerning to them. Of course, there's issues there too, but the southern border, that's pretty far from New Hampshire. And yet, Republican voters, it was the number one issue. It was actually beating out inflation. I saw that and I said, well, Donald Trump won this type because he made it such an issue of his first campaign of kind of, putting in the wall, putting more agents down there, giving them more of an ability to get people, the Remain in Mexico policies, Operation Talon, all of those policies that the new Homeland Security under the Biden administration and Mayorkas canceled on day one. Remember, we've got a FOIA on that, actually, at the ACLJ, Freedom of Information Act request about why did they so quickly reverse course on Trump policies that were legal. There were no legal problems with them, that were policies that were working. So they were helping America keep illegal immigration down. And the reason why is we believe it's just because they were Trump policies. And it has nothing to do with the fact that they were effective policies, but because they were Trump ideas and his administration ideas, they couldn't put those out. But you are seeing now, not just Republicans and not just a wing of the Republican Party. You're starting to see Republicans across the board and many Democrats, elected Democrats in the House, the Senate, governors and mayors say this. I mean, Fetterman, who is, far left as kind of as he runs, still is saying, what is the deal that we can't have a secure, what's wrong with saying we need a secure southern border? I'm not sure he's going to vote to impeach, but the issue here really is a dereliction of duty. And we have this ability of impeachment, which is pretty cool, Logan, is that even if the president of the United States doesn't want to take the move, and of course he could fire Mayorkas at any time, we, through our elected representatives, can remove bad, executive branch actors.
Yeah, and I think that's something that our audience needs to know and understand how that process worked. We'll break that down even more coming up. I did want to quickly tell you, we're going to talk about it later in the show, and we're going to have a big ACLJ win that you're going to be excited about coming up towards the end of this first half hour, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But also, yesterday we launched our sort of multimedia presentation on the true history of the Jewish homeland of Israel. We know that's been a conversation you've probably had at home. You've probably had it with your coworkers. You've probably had it with, if you have parishioners at a church, who knows what it would be. You had this conversation. Well, we have launched a really easy to understand, but incredibly deep look into the creation of the state of Israel, everything that happened leading up to it, biblical times all the way to present day. And you need to look at really the true story and get yourself armed with the facts, because a lot of anti-Semitic narratives are being spread around the globe right now, and you can be part of stopping it, and you really need to be. The truth must be told. So right now, we're going to ask you just go to aclj.org/defend Israel and arm yourself with these facts and share that link on your social media platforms that you use. Text it to your friends, send it to your pastor, put it in your church's Facebook group. People need to know about this. And again, we've been meeting with world leaders here at the ACLJ, and we have to defend Israel. And right now, Israel is losing that PR war to Hamas, and we need to be a part of making sure that that does not happen.
We've had our European team in London, the UK, meeting with their top leaders. They're now in Spain. And this is something, again, as Logan said, we are losing the support of Israel right now. It's kind of like, even after winning Roe versus Wade, and then you start losing on the abortion issue. On this Israel issue, don't take it for granted that Americans just support Israel anymore, or that even Christians support Israel anymore. So go and share aclj.org/defend Israel. And let me ask you this. We want your calls. Is immigration the number one issue to you? 1-800-684-3110. Or is it the economy? We'll be right back.
Republican Republicans on the House Homeland Security Committee voted to move forward with impeaching Mayorkas for his failure to secure the southern border, with a markup of the articles expected before the end of the month.
The numbers here, got away estimates for fiscal year 2023. In 2021, it was 389,000. That's a lot.
It is.
In 2023 right now, 860,000.
We have 8 million encounters at the border with no legal status. We have over 300 on the terror watch list who have come into the United States.
Bottom line, do you feel you have the votes to impeach Mayorkas?
Yes, we have the votes.
You have the votes, and are you seeing that as a opening to actually get this done? What happens in the Senate? Do you believe he will actually be out of the job?
I certainly hope so, Maria. Look, this guy has subverted the laws passed by Congress, ignoring a co-equal branch of government. It's very clear the law says shall detain, and Mayorkas has done everything not to detain. In fact, he's created systems that what he calls lawful parole, but it's actually totally contradicting the Immigration and Nationality Act that was passed by this Congress. The executive branch executes the laws. Congress writes laws. If a cabinet secretary doesn't believe in those laws, he should run for Congress and come over here and change them. He shouldn't just, like a king, do whatever he wants.
Mayorkas is ignoring the laws on the books and is subjecting the American people to enormous risk. We've seen crime. We see children being brutalized. We see women being sexually assaulted. We see over 100,000 drug overdoses last year, the highest in history. 70% of that is Chinese fentanyl flooding across the southern border. And those body bags are very much the fault of Alejandro Mayorkas and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And so I salute the House for doing the right thing. It needs to be done. This needs to stop.
All right, welcome back to Sekulow. We want to take your calls on this at 1-800-684-3110. We know now that next Tuesday they will begin the markup in the Homeland Security Committee hearing of the impeachment articles of Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security, for dereliction of duty. That's number one. And that alone is enough to be impeached. And the courts have been clear about that, going through, again, the impeachment clauses in our U.S. Constitution. And as we were pointing out before, that, again, it's an interesting way our Constitution was set up, that even when the President of the United States is unwilling to remove an ineffective member of their cabinet, Congress, our closest representatives, can. Now, they draw up articles of impeachment, and then they vote on it. Remember, it's got to go out of committee, so it has to pass the Homeland Security Committee, which, again, if they get all Republican votes, just takes a majority vote. And to impeach only takes a majority vote. Then there'll be impeachment managers. Remember, we have a lot of experience with this as attorneys. They are members of Congress. When you're the impeacher, the members of the House actually have to argue the case at the Senate. They can bring with them experts from inside and outside, but those inside and outside experts do not get to present in front of the U.S. Senate. The person being impeached can bring in both government attorneys, or like if you brought in your White House counsel, so if there were attorneys from Homeland Security, and also private, like we were with President Trump. And so you can have that mix and present. So that, if they move forward, I mean, that's what happened next. And you have then the majority vote, which I think they would get in the House, and then a trial in the Senate. I don't know that the votes are there. It doesn't look like the votes would be there because, remember, the Senate does require 2/3. But, Logan, it's just gotten to a point. I mean, it's so out of control with the numbers. Just when you look at, for instance, 10 million since he's been in office there's been illegal border crossing 10 million. At least 1.8 million of those have totally disappeared. So just in 3 years, there's 2 million more people in America that they don't know anything about. All they know is that they got away.
This is sort of
that's a lot of people.
Yeah, this is sort of the issue that I don't want to say it's a uniting issue because a lot of people have different ways they want to take care of it.
Yeah.
But is an issue that everyone seems to know is the number one issue, is the problem. You have conservatives, Democrats. You've said definitely conservatives and moderates. I'd say even the moderate news saying we have to do something. Something's got to be done. This is getting out of control. And whether that, again, is you want to take an extreme nature or not extreme nature on how you want to to present it. Everyone knows there's a problem. So I think what's interesting with the border and what's interesting with Homeland Security in general right now is that everyone knows this is a top priority. All it is right now is finding the people who will actually get something done. I think you even had that when Newsom and some of them were kind of clearly making their run to potentially replace Biden. They were talking about it highly. They were making it big moments. They were talking about the unsecure. They were visiting the border and doing that whole thing. They know the American people are at a breaking point of going, we have to take care of this issue because we are seeing how it's impacting. Again, it's not about not being compassionate to those who are trying to seek America for the right reasons. It's being just at least secure and safe. And you can't let your country just get out of hand.
Yeah, I think, again, when you look at the numbers, I mean, the 10 million, just since he's been there, the fact that we have laws, the Secure Fence Act of 2006, to maintain control over that, and he's ignored it. I mean, so he is violating his oath of, that the laws are faithfully executed. The guarantee clause in Article 4 of the Constitution states the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a Republican form of government, and this is the key, and shall protect each of them against invasion. I mean, Logan, I think that's where people may get across the line and say, well, is this actually invasion or not? And again, I think what I want to explain to people like how it moves forward. We'll go to Bob in a second, but it's that term invasion. To me, it's reached that level. When you think about the amount of people who've died because of fentanyl, it's the number one killer of ages 18 to 45 in America. I mean, so invasion kind of makes sense because people are dying. People are losing their lives. Americans are dying.
Yeah, I think that for people who've been impacted by it, it's a big deal. It's something that everyone finds important. Maybe if you're living in certain areas of the country, you're not experiencing it on the daily basis, or maybe you're one of the few people who haven't had that happen in your family's life. But if you are, it's hitting very close to home for a lot of people. I think that's why you are seeing some form, and again, I will say a mild form of bipartisanship in this.
I want to go to Bob Burkett. He is our ACLJ Action Chief of Staff. And Bob, I tell people what ACLJ Action is doing, but I also kind of want to walk them through how quick you think this is going to move next week. So it starts Tuesday in the committee. I know sometimes Democrats will try to slow things down. I mean, this is, to me, is a little bit less partisan than like impeaching a president because you don't like their policies. I mean, this is very specific to Mayorkas and the border. But how long do we expect that markup of these articles to take? And what we're hearing is like there'll be 3 or 4 articles of impeachment that they're going to present.
Yeah, absolutely, Jordan. So my understanding is there are going to be 4 articles of impeachment that they finally integrate into the bill, the resolution. And so, as you mentioned, the markup's going to happen next Tuesday. There will be a process through which they amend, I believe, Marjorie Taylor Greene's resolution to add in all the articles with probably some strong supporting evidence gathered over the course of the last year or so that Chairman Greene has been conducting an extensive investigation. And as you know, ACLJ Action has been pretty active on this, encouraging our members to engage their own representatives in both the House and in the Senate to encourage them to move forward swiftly with an impeachment of Mayorkas for high crimes and misdemeanors. So I appreciate all the members who have engaged in that campaign thus far, and it's really generated some positive momentum, as you see, that is taking shape on Tuesday as the next step.
And then it gets brought before the Senate. Do you expect, Bob, I mean, because I know we have the Republican majority in the House, it's slim. Are we going to get the impeachment vote? I mean, I don't feel like many Democrats are going to vote to impeach, even ones that have policy issues that have been upset about this because it hurts Biden, the bigger picture. But do you think the votes are there to actually get him impeached in the House?
Yeah. I mean, I think I think Republicans seem reasonably confident that they will be able to bring it to a vote on the floor soon after it leaves committee. Now, we could be looking as soon as 2 weeks out from today. It could come to the floor the week of February 5th. But it all depends on, who's in town that day. And I don't know if there are any Republican holdouts. I can't imagine there are a lot, but if there are some people that need kind of swaying at the last minute, that may also impact the timing of bringing it to the floor. But I don't think they'll bring it to the floor unless they know it can pass, and they seem like pretty confident it'll pass.
Yeah, right. There's all these there's time issues with how long you want people to have it. And then, of course, we were talking to people, Bob, when this moves to the Senate, which is also key, while the trial is ongoing, that's all the Senate business that is done.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they can't do, and, when we did the impeachment trial, I mean, this, in a sense, because, and listen, that was the Democrats' decision. This time it's Republicans' decision for the most part. I mean, you are locking up the Senate. Now, I think an impeachment of a president takes a little bit more time. I'm not sure of a cabinet member if it would take quite as long. Of course, that all has to come to an agreement to some extent. But it's a major moment in the country, and we haven't seen a lot of these at the secondary level.
Yeah, no, this is the first impeachment of a cabinet member to take place since 1870. Secretary of War was last impeached in 1876. I unfortunately have not done any digging in my 19th century congressional history to figure out how long that impeachment took. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think it's going to, make everyone focus on this issue for as long as that Senate impeachment trial is ongoing, which, as you mentioned, it's a key issue, seemingly uniting both sides of the aisle. So something that a lot of people will care about and probably a lot of people will tune in for.
All right, folks, go to acljaction.org. Get your letter to your member of Congress. Bob, thanks for all the great work you guys are doing at ACLJ Action, staying on this issue. And Logan, we know inflation was the number one issue in the economy, and that flipped in the last few weeks. And I think it's because the way people have been, I think immigration and illegal immigration includes the economy. It includes drugs. It includes people who are losing family members because of those drugs. It includes what your city looks like and your schools.
Yeah, I think sadly you probably get a
Kinda
little.
encompasses
we sort of
everything.
get a little used to inflation. You start, you start looking at gas prices when people start bragging like it's under $3. You're like, well, look where we were a couple of years ago. You'd be shocked if it was over $2. So we get a little used to that. What we don't get used to is chaos and death and what's happening in our nation and what's happening on our streets. When you're walking down streets and you see the crisis that's happening in cities like New York, San Francisco. Phone lines are open right now. We'd love to hear from you right now. 1-800-684-3110. The big question we're asking is, what is the number one issue to you? Is it immigration? Is it inflation? Is it one of our ACLJ key core issues like Israel or life? We'd love to hear from you. I want to get those. We're taking those in the fifth segment. So that's, for those who don't know, that's in like 2 segments from now. We're going to take as many of those as possible. So 1-800.
The wrong answers here, so don't feel discouraged about it. We really want to know, just kind of, because immigration just became number one nationally, and then also in like a state like New Hampshire, it went from inflation to that immigration. So again, 1-800-684-3110, and share aclj.org/defend Israel. We need you to get that out there.
Some people think champions are bored, that it's a title that requires something only a handful can ever possess.
There are times in our lives that we are called, every one of us, to step up and serve a cause greater than ourselves.
Even when the loudest voices in the room say it's wrong, that it can't be done. It can be a difficult stand, but it's one any of us can make, including you.
You can be the change. You can make that difference.
You can be a champion. We cannot do what we do without you.
By becoming a monthly donor, you can become a champion of life.
A champion of liberty, a champion of freedom.
Please join us. Become an ACLJ champion today.
ACLJ champion reporting for duty. And I say it that way because without you guys, I could not bear the news that I'm hearing. You're fighting for decency worldwide.
Hey, Jordan. Hey, Jay. I just want to let you know that I've supported ACLJ for 30 years and continue today. Thank you for all that you do.
Yes, I'm a small monthly donor for several years. I love that you explain the law according to the Constitution and that you fight for everybody, the big guy and the little guy.
I can't think of how many times the ACLJs were working over Christmas and Thanksgiving and New Year's while the rest of us are on vacation. Is there any other organization in our country that would be fighting for these kinds of things? This country, I believe, is in an emergency. You've said it, Jay, but we are being attacked in the legal realm. We need brilliant and dedicated attorneys for what ails us. Let's make sure the ACLJ has the armor it needs through our giving to fight for us. Please join our family of supporters. Have the peace of mind to face the new year boldly.
All right, welcome back to Sekulow. We are taking your calls to 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. And I did want to kind of focus in on a little bit more on Mayorkas. We didn't get to the sound bites yet of how this impeachment sets up. But I do want to take a call first because a bill in Wyoming has been hanging there, and I think it kind of does set this up before I go to the sound, where Mayorkas kind of set himself up to be impeached the way he's testified under oath to Congress. But Bill, in Wyoming, you're on the air with us. Thanks for waiting.
Yeah, appreciate you answering my calls. First of all, I believe immigration is definitely number one for me, and the fact that inflation and all this, I'm beginning to think it's even affecting where I work. My question, though, is what if Mayorkas says, well, why should I be impeached? I'm doing my job because I'm following what the president wanted with his executive order. I'm confused, or what do you think?
It's not. He could try to make that defense. I'm just following the orders of the president. But if the orders are bad, you can still be impeached. So that's not going to. It's not a defense that works. It's still an uphill battle to see him removed. I think he will be impeached in the sense by the House, but I don't think he will be necessarily convicted as the votes stand right now. I do say we are adding more and more Democrats to our side who believe that immigration has gotten out of control. Remember, first it was supposed to be the vice president. It was supposed to be Harris who was going to be the immigration czar. And then, I mean, she didn't really do anything. Remember, they made like one trip. They never even really went to the actual border. They kind of ignore the issue. And then there were Democrat mayors like the New York City mayor and others who have said, this is ruining our cities. I mean, this is causing chaos. So it's why I think if you had a real hearing, just saying, well, I'm following bad orders, that's not good enough for an executive. If you're a cabinet member and you feel like the orders that you're being given are so bad that they are a danger to the country and they violate actually your constitutional duty, you should resign as a cabinet member. And that's why, again, you have an ability to impeach not just presidents or vice presidents, but the ability to impeach their executives, their cabinet. Because so they can't get around that idea of, hey, I'm just doing it because that's what President Biden's telling me to do.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, phone lines are lighting up right now at 1-800-684-3110. A lot of people calling in with their top issues. We'll get to as many of those calls as possible coming up.
I wanted to play. We had a Congressman Chip Roy. This is back in 2022. He was talking to Mayorkas. He asked a very simple question. Again, remember, 2022, bite 17.
Will you testify under oath right now? Do we have operational control, yes or no?
Yes, we do. And
we have operational control of the borders.
Yes, we do.
Okay. I mean, that was very clear. Operational control is like much more than just control. I mean, that's like it's fully under your authority. You got no issues, maybe some little, problems here and there, but basically it'd be like in a military setting, this is our territory and we've claimed it, and no one, other than a few here and there moments, no major problems. No drugs are going to get through. People shouldn't be dying of, the number one cause of death for 18 to 45-year-olds shouldn't be fentanyl. So that was pretty early on in the Mayorkas days, 2022, even after they had reversed the Trump administration policies, which I would say were working. I'm not sure they would have said they had operational control yet. They were working towards, in the Trump administration, getting operational control. I don't think they would have necessarily been as so bold as to say, we already have it. They were trying to get there. It was improving significantly. But then, Logan, we moved to 2023 over the summer. And Chip Roy asked basically the same question to Mayorkas. Take a listen, bite 19.
If you will recall when you testified here in front of me when I asked that question, when you very clearly stated, we do have operational control. When presented with the actual definition of operational control, you didn't hesitate. You said, I do. And you, in fact, then referred back and said, I believe that my predecessors would have said the same thing. You looked straight at the American people, straight at me, straight at every person on this committee, and said, we have operational control. Why?
Congressman, 2 points. 1, you did not let me complete my answer. 2.
Hold on. Let's give me your second point. Go ahead.
Thank you. 2, the Secure Fence Act defines operational control as not a single individual crosses the border.
I'm aware. I read it, and I read it to you, and you read it, and in fact, you said, I do. You didn't hesitate. You didn't say, I do. I need to explain what I mean by I do. You said I do over and over again.
You know, I think when you realize that, first of all, he answered it. You heard the bite in 17 from 2022. Chip Roy didn't cut him off at all. He's trying to rewrite again, Logan, the definitions of what was I answering at the time. Maybe I didn't know what I was answering. So that just gives you an example. Again, 1, do they even care about this issue? I don't think so. And 2, are they going to change policies? No. We just have to keep presenting it because there are members of Congress, even on the left, like Fetterman, who have made very strong comments. I do want to go, though, Logan, to a big ACLJ victory. And this one, 2019, this case started.
Yeah, almost 5 years ago.
But because of COVID, got put on hold. You may have remember us talking about it. It was the Virginia Realtors Association. We represent a realtor who was actually making a complaint for one of her clients. So she had a client who felt like a property was not being sold or rented to them because of who they were, based off their race or religion or background. And she was making a complaint, which they would to this Virginia board, the state agency. And by making that complaint, she then gets in trouble. The state agency goes after her because she's got Bible verses, Logan, on her email signature and on her private website.
And by Bible verses, we mean things like John 3:16 or the Golden Rule, the kind of the standards. Not talking about something controversial here. No. Talking about pretty much just an indication of who you're working with. Is maybe kind of a straight shooter. That's about all we're talking about here. Gets slapped down. 5 years later, though, we have a pretty epic resolution, which is a change of law.
Yes. So we took this to court. So first we went through their review board. Again, that is the Virginia Real Estate Board. And then in the it was the Circuit Court of the City of Richmond. We have won. They've struck down the provisions of the Commonwealth of Virginia's fair housing law as, again, not clear. And because the way it says is that if you talk about religion at all, it can't be there. And, of course, you can't have statements like that. There's no context around it. So even, like Logan said, even if you were to put something that was just a very basic, like, didn't even say Jesus, didn't even say heaven, it was just saying, like, do good.
Well, yeah, do unto others.
And that's it, like the golden rule. That would be violation of the statute as much as one that said, from the Old Testament about enslaving people because they're not. So he said there's no context to this, which, again, violates the laws and the Constitution. So we won this in court. So I want to make clear, at one of these battles, 4 years, ACLJ stood with it to win. And it's not just a win for that client. Now it's a win for all the folks in that state with the Fair Housing Act there applies to, that this section was unconstitutional. That, again, you can't have this attack on your First Amendment. And that's a great indication why you should support the work of the ACLJ at aclj.org, because when we take on these cases, not only do we win, we stick by our clients as long as it takes to get these victories. And when we do win, yes, our client wins, but so does everyone else in Virginia in this matter. ACLJ.org. Become an ACLJ champion today at ACLJ.org. Second half hour coming up. The ACLJ has a 30-plus year history of fighting on behalf of you, our members, in support of life,
abortion's murder,
religious liberty.
A Turkish court has freed American pastor Andrew Brunson.
Justice, personal freedom, and constitutional government. Our freedoms are under attack. Now, more than ever.
We are not going back. Abortion is healthy.
Yet another week of violence.
They use their power and influence to push deeply un-American causes that threaten to destroy our country. Abortion on demand, socialism, inflation, cancel culture, weakness in the face of our adversaries. We owe it to our kids and grandkids to defend the things that make this country great. It's time to take the gloves off and uphold American values.
Go to acljaction.org to learn more.
Keeping you informed and engaged. Now more than ever. This is Sekulow. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
Folks, welcome back to Sekulow. We are taking your phone calls to 1-800-684-3110. And as we have asked, what is that number one issue to you with the Mayorkas, again, the impeachment beginning now next Tuesday? That was announced by the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, Mark Green, the congressman from Tennessee. So we're going to have articles of impeachment drawn up. We think there will be 4. Those then will be voted on by the committee. If the committee gets them out, that's just a majority vote. And there's more Republicans than Democrats on it, so it likely will. Timeline on that, we're not exactly sure. Then it goes to the floor of the House, probably by end of February, you're getting a vote there. Again, if Republicans stick together, you don't need Democrats. It's just a majority vote. And then you go to the actual trial in the Senate. So I think it's very likely right now that we're moving towards an impeachment of Mayorkas and a trial in the U.S. Senate, unless President Biden thinks it's going to focus too much attention on his bad immigration policy and he should have Mayorkas removed. Because if he removed Mayorkas and put someone new in place, you wouldn't have to necessarily change any of the policies, but you wouldn't have time to impeach that new person. So there's some interesting moves you can take. We'll see how wedded he is, President Biden, to Mayorkas, or does he use him as a way to try and take this issue, which we asked Logan, has now become a number one issue to many people across the country.
Let's take a call here just so we can start, kind of getting your point of view. Let's go to Richard in California on line 3. Richard, you're on the air.
Outstanding. Thanks for taking my call. This is awesome. Mayorkas is just one of the string holders to the Biden administration. Biden's not going to do anything to him because he's one of his advisors. Hell, how about that? Heck, Biden wouldn't know what to do without any of these sideways advisors. But on a local perspective, our twice attempted impeached Governor Newsom, he needs to take the same position as Governor Greg Abbott and start cracking down on our own border. We have fentanyl coming across this border. We have not only criminals from every country, not only Mexico, not to mention probably every terrorist organization that's come across these borders. Our next big war, it's going to be right here in our backyards. It's going to make 9/11 look like a picnic.
Yeah, listen, I think we saw again out of the Supreme Court that there are steps states can take inside their borders to protect their citizens from criminal activity. But the Supreme Court is still wedded to the issue that in the Constitution, they feel like their hands are tied in Article 1 because immigration is under the authority of Congress and the executive branch. And that if they don't act, you can't act in their place. I'm not saying I agree with that, but again, there's only so much you can blame on your state officials. Now, you can certainly blame them if they want to become sanctuary cities, if they aren't doing anything, if they are supporting policies that don't work. The tough thing is every time they want to actually take action, Logan, it's halted, even if it works. It's a weird thing that, like, the Biden administration of Texas, what they're doing is working. What the Trump administration was doing was working. But because they mocked Remain in Mexico, they had to get rid of Remain in Mexico, and then the numbers blew up again.
Yeah, and we're going to take more calls coming up. So if you do have a thought of what your number one issue is, let us know. I will tell you, it's not all been immigration. I can see the phone screening software here, so don't feel like you have to call in and say that. A lot of people have not said that. I mean, we're going to take those, so we hear from you too. 1-800-684-3110. Also, right now, you need to go into our Defend Israel campaign, aclj.org/Defend Israel. On that page, you can also become an ACLJ champion, which means you decide to support the work, put your money where your mouth is, support the work on a monthly recurring basis.
Yeah, what this is our multimedia primer on the true history of the Jewish homeland, Israel, because you're seeing so much bad info. And that's why we want you to share it on social media. So we put it together for you, the story of the Jewish state of Israel. So you go to aclj.org/Defend Israel and share that link on all of your social media platforms. Doesn't cost you a thing. People need to know this information, the truth about the state of Israel, the Jewish state of Israel. Go to aclj.org/defend Israel. We'll be right back on Sekulow.
More than 100 days after October 7th, the plight of the hostages remains on the hearts and minds of Israelis.
There are reports that Israel and Hamas terrorists may be close to an agreement to swap hostages for Palestinian prisoners. According to reports, Qatar, the U.S., Egypt have all been trying to broker a new deal which could include a month-long ceasefire. Whether there will be an agreement and what the exact terms are uncertain. Right now, reports say Israel is seeking to negotiate a stage-by-stage agreement, while Hamas terrorists are seeking a package deal. According to unnamed mediators, Hamas wants a permanent ceasefire that must be agreed upon first before any hostage release. Hamas also wants Israel's full withdrawal from Gaza.
Time is running out for them. Time has already run out for those who were executed. And we want all friends, allies, and people and nations of conscience around the world to demand their immediate and unconditional release. And until then, to demand that the Red Cross get access to the hostages so it can give them the medical treatment that they desperately need so they can escape from that hellhole alive and safe.
We will continue to pursue these avenues in parallel, and we're dealing with brutal terrorists here. There are no guarantees, of course, but we on our end will continue to do everything possible.
These are the last cards that Hamas has in Gaza, so they're holding on to them very tightly.
It's also reported that Hamas terrorists want the U.S., Egypt, and Qatar to guarantee that Israel would not resume fighting once hostages have been released. According to an unnamed Hamas terrorist leaders, Israel has offered to end the war if Hamas removes 6 of its senior leaders from Gaza.
The Israeli government will continue to pursue every possible avenue to try to bring to the release of more hostages. We want to see all of them home and immediately.
The thing that Netanyahu really needs most right now is to bring the hostages home. That is something that weighs on all of Israelis, and it's really the one unifying factor that everybody can get around at this point in this war.
Welcome back to Sekulow. We are going to take more of your phone calls, but we do want to. We've been asking people to go to aclj.org/defend Israel. If you're watching the broadcast or listening, what you're about to hear is the video we're asking people and the webpage we're asking people to share, Logan. They go to aclj.org/defend Israel. We're pushing this hard this week. We want you to get this truth out and the title as well.
That's right. All you have to do is go to aclj.org/defend Israel. You'll see this video and a lot of other great content you can download as well. So let's take a watch of this special, The Myth of Palestine.
Free, free Palestine! 1, 2, 3, 4! Occupation no more! 1, 2, 3, 4! Occupation no more! Israel is a terrorist state!
The myth of Palestine is a dangerous and false narrative being perpetuated by those who seek to harm the Jewish people. This narrative intentionally overlooks the thousands of years of history and the rightful ownership of the land by the Jewish people. It ignores the repeated attempts by Israel to make peace and the ongoing attacks and aggression from terrorist organizations like Hamas. We must not be deceived by this attempt to erase the Jewish people from their homeland. Following is the true history of Israel and the so-called Palestine. We begin with Israel beginning in 1800 BC. Abraham heard the call of God and followed it to the land between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River, the Promised Land. Shortly after, the Egyptians enslaved nearly all of the Israelites, and it wasn't until 500 years later that their descendants were able to return to the Promised Land. From then on, this region had a long history of conquest and power struggles, with Jerusalem at the center. From the time of King David's rule in 1004 BC to the Roman conquest in 63 BC, the city endured numerous shifts in power and the destruction and rebuilding of temples. 70 years later, the Romans drove nearly all Jews out of Israel, forcing them to scatter across the world. It wasn't until circa AD 136 the name Palestine first appeared after the Romans named part of Judea, Syria, Palestina to erase the Jewish presence in the land. Throughout the ensuing centuries, the region of Jerusalem continued to be subject to numerous conquests. In AD 638, Arab Muslims took control. Centuries later, Christian crusaders claimed the city, only to be defeated by Saladin, the Muslim Sultan of Egypt and Syria in AD 1187. The region then fell under the rule of the Ottoman Empire, Turks, in AD 1517, until 400 years later, when during the Great War in 1917, the British Empire conquered the region. The British made a public pledge, the Balfour Declaration, which aimed to establish a national home for the Jewish people in the area still known by the Roman name Palestine. Then, in 1922, 4 years after the war ended, the League of Nations created the Mandate for Palestine to reconstitute a national home for the Jewish people. The region was redrawn into what is now modern-day Israel, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. Only 22% was left to create the Jewish state. Then, just over a decade later, from 1933 to 1945, the Nazi Party took power in Germany and massacred almost 2/3 of Europe's Jewish population. 6 million Jews. After World War II in 1947, the United Nations adopted the Partition Resolution, a two-state solution to create another Arab state and a Jewish state in the remaining Mandate territory reserved for the Jews. In order to have peace with their Arab neighbors, the Jews accepted, but the Arabs rejected it and invaded Israel, which began the Arab-Israeli War of 1948. No state of Palestine was created. The state of Israel was. Over the following decades, the Middle East was marked by ongoing conflicts between Israel and its Arab neighbors. In 1964, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, also known as the PLO, was founded, whose ultimate goal was the destruction of Israel. In 1967, the Six-Day War was waged by surrounding Arab countries. That's when the West Bank and the Gaza Strip became a part of Israel. Then, the 1973 attack on Yom Kippur began. In 1987, the terrorist organization Hamas was founded by members of the Muslim Brotherhood. That same year, Hamas began waging jihad, holy war, during the First Intifada against Israel in order to wipe out all Jews. Between 1993 and 1995, Israel and the PLO made agreements for a peaceful resolution to the Arab-Israeli conflict. These agreements granted self-governance to the Arab populations of the Gaza Strip and West Bank in exchange for peace with Israel. Instead of peace, militants from the Gaza Strip and the West Bank continued their attacks against Israel. From 2000 to 2005, the Palestinians began a wave of terrorist attacks called the Second Intifada. Remember what this means: the eradication of Jews. So in 2005, yet another attempt to achieve peace was made, and Israel left Gaza, even though Gaza is a rightful part of Israel. In 2012, the UN General Assembly agreed to change the PLO's membership status at the UN from an observer organization to that of a non-member state with observer status. Observers generally have a limited ability to participate in the IGO, lacking the ability to vote or propose resolutions. Then, on October 7, 2023, the world was shaken by the horrific actions of Hamas as they launched a vicious attack on Israel. The death toll rose to over 1,300 innocent lives, including men, women, children, the elderly, and even infants. The atrocities committed by the attackers were unspeakable. Women were raped, dead bodies were desecrated, and over 240 people were taken hostage. What history clearly illustrates is that Israel did not steal any land from the Palestinians. In fact, there has never been a state of Palestine. The Romans gave the name to the area that includes modern-day Israel, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. This land was stolen from the Jewish people, just as it had been for millennia before. Learn more at aclj.org/defend Israel.
Folks, again, if you were just writing and you were just hearing that, it's a full video as well. And we want you to share it with your friends and family on all of your social media accounts. It doesn't cost you a thing. Yeah. You go to aclj.org/defend Israel, and there's a lot of great tools there, but you're specifically sharing the myth of Palestine. We know, Logan, we are losing this issue right now, not just to the left and to college kids, but inside our churches.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I was saying. Not only just post on your social media pages, go to your Facebook groups, text your pastor, text people in your church, your prayer threads, whatever you have, text this link out to as many people as possible. It's optimized on your phone, looks great. It's easy for them to see it. So that is aclj.org/defend Israel. We're running short on time. We're going to take as many calls quickly as we can. So keep it short. Jim, Maryland, what's your number one issue on line 4? Jim, you're on the air.
Number one issue is vote fraud. If we don't take care of that before 2024, they will steal the election and everything else becomes irrelevant.
Right, election integrity is Jim's. Jim's
it's a top issue for people. It's been a top issue for us. There's been a lot of changes.
Yep, absolutely.
And you saw that. You should have seen that 2 years ago in the congressional races in states across the country. There were a lot of changes to electoral integrity.
And I will tell you, a lot of the calls are that. We're going to keep going. We'll get some diversity here of people's thought. Julie's calling from Oregon, line 5. Julie, you're up. Quickly.
Hi, yes. Government corruption, what I would consider deep state players. I want that all cleaned out.
I mean, listen, that really covers so many of these issues, right? If these bad actors, and we know, if we know that if Donald Trump is back, the swamp, what they do is come in and they come in to stop your policies. So where you've been elected by the people and you say, we want to do this policy, they try to make it impossible for you to enact those policies. And we talked about it with our colleagues like Mike Pompeo is going to be joining us in the next segment of the broadcast. This idea is the swamp had started to be drained, and look at the cost President Trump paid to start draining the swamp. He got impeached twice, all the trials now, even though he's winning these primaries. It was all started because he said Jim Comey, who did something horrible to Hillary Clinton, by the way, with election interference, was no good and needed to be fired. And when he did that, the deep state struck back. Remember the Chuck Schumer threat? The CIA, don't take the intelligence community on. So again, if we do elect another Donald Trump again to go drain the swamp, remember how difficult it is and how they come at you. You have to be prepared. I think he will be more prepared this time, knowing it will be all the gloves come off immediately.
It's a different game. All right. You can go to aclj.org right now. We actually go to aclj.org/defend Israel. Share that. Mike Pompeo coming up in the next segment.
The ACLJ's work at the UN Human Rights Council is extremely important.
We're taking specific, concrete action to protect those that cannot speak out for themselves.
The Human Rights Council is the entity within the United Nations body that is responsible for promoting and protecting all human rights.
Lives are on the line here. This is putting real cases with real people in front of the UN.
As the UN is currently the international stage to address these issues, we want to make sure we are there speaking up for the victims of religious persecution who are often dismissed and overlooked. Ministry of Presence is actually a very effective tool when fighting for justice.
Putting this forward before the Human Rights Council is a very important part of our advocacy for people that really can't speak up for themselves.
You get to name and shame publicly world powers. No other place you can really do that. You can do it on your radio broadcast. That's not our audience, though. These are international actors. You get to go into their home at the UN, where that's their safe space for a lot of these bad actors, and call them out.
Through our European Center for Law and Justice, which is an NGO, we participate in each session, drafting written submissions and delivering oral interventions covering the most egregious human rights and religious liberty violations.
We do it at a very different level.
You've got to push and push.
It's important to be front and center, because what that does is enable us to report firsthand. And what we're doing is getting actual action from this. People released from prison because of our advocacy at these levels.
We are committed to defending religious liberty and human rights worldwide. and we will continue to be actively engaged at the UN Human Rights Council and with its subsidiaries every chance we get. Visit aclj.org for more information.
Welcome back to Sekulow. We're joined by our Senior Counsel for Global Affairs, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. It's interesting, Secretary Pompeo. We were talking to folks in the last segment of the broadcast because we saw immigration actually flip with inflation in both Iowa and in New Hampshire with the exit polls, where earlier polls had showed the economy and inflation as the number one issue Republicans were voting in the primary on. And then in the exit polls, you saw it flip to actually the immigration issues. We also, though, have had people call and say, on all those issues, the real issue would be that if President Trump and his team get back in, is that they've got the swamp to contend with. And I wanted to ask you, when you were as Secretary of State, how difficult was it when you had policies that you were working on that the president wanted implemented and the swamp did not like? How hard did they work to try and undermine you?
Well, Jordan, it was certainly across a broad range of issues, immigration certainly included. It was difficult. They were mostly establishment, some progressive left, but mostly just a foreign policy establishment that didn't want change, was afraid to do the things that would actually reduce risk for the United States of America. But in the end, we were able to actually deliver on most of them, but it made life more complicated. It made resistance something that you had to make sure you thought about as you were trying not only to put the policies forward, but to both implement and execute them. It certainly made our task more complicated and more difficult.
Yeah, I wanted to just make that clear to people. I mean, see, the left doesn't usually have to deal with that. They come in, that entire bureaucracy is like extra political appointees for them, happy to implement whatever policies they'd like. For us, we come in, you got to make sure that it stays within your team, that they don't try to kill the idea before it even becomes a policy, the private discussions that go into that, and of course then the execution. And it is a real issue. And you also see, folks, the cost that you pay by taking on the swamp directly and trying to remove those individuals. But ultimately, it does look like at least Republican voters right now want to put people back in office who were willing to fight that fight. I want to go to some issues happening around the world. Secretary Pompeo, China is upset after one of our warships sailed through the Taiwan Strait. How do we keep things from escalating there? I mean, the fact that because we're seeing an escalation in Iran, but a ship sails through, and that's going to cause potential conflict.
Jordan, the Chinese Communist Party is quick to squawk when an American vessel goes through, and a military vessel goes through the strait. But this is, of course, international waters. They do the same thing when we have Americans senior American leaders travel to Taiwan. They overreact in ways that just don't reflect the risk to them. All of that setting up this narrative somehow that they are the victim of aggression. The way you avoid the kinds of things we're seeing both in Europe and Ukraine today and what we're seeing in the Middle East is the resolve to continue to do these things, to continue to demonstrate that we're going to do the right things. We're going to ensure that there's freedom of navigation. We're going to ensure that we're with our friends and partners. And frankly, Jordan, we have to win. One of the things that I think gets lost in this conflict in the Middle East is that the whole world is looking for Israel to win. We have to ensure that we defeat evil. And when you begin to restrain the victim and to provide support, sometimes even financial support to the aggressor who committed that kind of barbarity, then folks like Xi Jinping in China think that if they just squawk a naval vessel traveling through international waters, they'll actually have an effect on American policy.
It seems like, Secretary Pompeo, it's tough to predict what it looks like is going to happen next in Israel. I mean, sometimes I hear some of their cabinet members, like Nir Barkat, who is Israel's economic minister in these coalition governments, and he's saying that, Iran is a legitimate target for Israeli missiles because they're behind all of these actions. I mean, that would become, again, that's all-out war. And then said that Israel wasn't aggressive enough, which a lot of the world has said Israel, was too aggressive. So this balancing, even with inside Israel, and about what to do with the potential of Hezbollah. I mean, we still can't rule out Hezbollah getting more involved in another front opening in this conflict. So, I mean, I think at this time it's so key for the United States to double down on our support of Israel, because it's this conflict, like you said, it's not over, and Hamas itself has not been eliminated.
Jordan, you have that precisely right. Look, it's true. Israel's a democracy, so there are, different people with different views, different factions within the Likud party, within the government. That's all fine. But my observation, Israel, is that the people of Israel are largely united in the central thesis, which is we cannot allow an armed Hamas, an armed terrorist, to threaten us from our border and to allow something like October 7th to ever be possible again. And what they need from the United States is bullets, ammunition, and our unfettered support in understanding their need, not their desire, their need to actually keep their country safe, to protect their sovereign borders, and to keep their people secure. If we begin to talk about what it might look like after, and that we're going to allow the Palestinian Authority, who is still paying terrorists, they're still paying terrorists to kill. If we somehow begin to talk about that, we will embolden them. They'll wait us out, thinking that they can do, as they have said they're going to do, October 7th over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, we have a team that was just in the UK meeting with their top leaders. Now they're in Spain, still with some of these families of hostages, and our ACLJ team, our European Center for Law and Justice team, is there working alongside them and the leadership in Europe to keep this front and center. People don't forget this issue. We've also launched, Logan, like at aclj.org/defend Israel. Secretary Pompeo, as always, is great to have you on the broadcast. Great to have you on the team for all of that insight. And Logan's, we're kind of coming to a close. Everything we were just talking about there was Secretary Pompeo. It goes back to the idea of understanding the Jewish state of Israel. And then, because you can't get to the point of saying Israel has got to have the ability to defeat Hamas completely unless you understand that this is legitimately Israel's land.
Yeah, you need to find out the true history of Israel. It's very easy. Go to aclj.org/defend Israel. On that page, you're going to find a 7-minute video we showed in an earlier segment. You're going to find a downloadable PDF document of all these different kinds of texts that you can have. Again, it's arming yourself with information, because we know a lot of people are coming at you from all sides, in your church, in your family, and they want to know the history of it. Well, we broke it down, trying to make it as easy to understand as possible with enough data and enough information. So it's not just, it was theirs in the Bible, therefore that's it. There's so much information in this that really takes you from biblical times right until present day. So you need to go watch this video if you haven't seen it already, but mainly take that link, aclj.org/defend Israel, and share it, and just continue to share it, whether that is on social media, whether that's in text threads, whether that's in Facebook groups, wherever it is that you can reach people with this link. We're going to encourage you to do it, because it's that important. I want to thank those who called in who we didn't get to today. I appreciate it. I'm sorry we weren't able to get to everyone today. It was a slammed show, but really packed with a lot of information. While you're on that page, aclj.org/defend Israel, I want you also to consider becoming an ACLJ champion. That is people who've decided to give to the ACLJ and the causes that we support here at the ACLJ. All you have to do is go to that page at the bottom. You'll see a section to make a donation and become a champion. You can make it a one-time donation, or, like we said, you become a champion, which is a recurring donor, someone who says, I want to be a part of the organization in perpetuity, and we appreciate that. So do that right now, aclj.org/defend Israel.
I think it's so important, too. Keep sharing it through your social media accounts. Use different, again, go to different places, and then, space it out. Just because you shared it once doesn't mean you can't share it again, or share it within comments, too, because there's so much bad info out there about Israel. So we've put it in a cool way with this website, but also in a very watchable video. You already heard it on today's show, but with great graphics that tells you and explains the history of the Jewish state of Israel and the facts that this is the rightful land of the Jewish people. So go to aclj.org/